Okay, I'll add as a little preface I forgot to mention. So Gary talked about the name. Yeah, well, here's the thing. So I have my kind of naming style that I like, and I have Fight Club, and I'm not sure that's a great name, but it's grown on me, and that often happens. And I have this Tile Lab name in my AppSpot thing that I love, and on the other hand, I often think the names I like are not things that would be in the front. They wouldn't be the name of the magazine. They're like more like the powered by, chroma color. Little asterisks that sort of seep in if they're doing something cool, but otherwise, most of those kinds of brands are just for people that are into the making the stuff. Um, but anyway, when I wonder if I'm getting too much in my own personal style, naming something professionally, I just get like real straight or conservative about public dialogue server. I wanted to get away from the free speech thing. It's really there's other ways to put what I want to capture, what we all want to capture. And the thing is, though, even if I was to say, okay, well, not free speech, but I will call it about the proper platform for what we need. You know, Uh, no matter what the goal, if the goal is in the name, then we have sort of a commitment to a particular perspective on what? On the public dialogue. Now, public dialogue doesn't really roll off your tongue, and the word server doesn't help. And I could see getting a better name, but I think maybe something fairly straightforward that just says what it is. It shouldn't be free speech express guarantee of the universe. You know, we don't want to like promise something like that. It should just be like a name that conveys that we're storing this shit and following the rules. And the way we named ourselves, you can look up the rules and here they are. But public dialogue server, there, you can have things that are sort of like this conservative, or for lack of a better way of putting it, technically, just, yeah, like renaming a janitor a facilities engineer. One of these facilities engineer kind of names. But it could still roll off the tongue better. But the thing is, public dialogue, I don't know, even if people don't really know, that there is a history of that, and that term, and that idea. And really, fair use is to protect it. Even the education side of fair use, you can say, is because that's the community communicating with its kids. And it's still about the public dialogue and what we need to tell kids. It's like if copyright was so protected you couldn't even mention a copyrighted work, then you couldn't teach literature in class, and so on. But there might be another term. And also, if we, whoever we get together, before we, actually launch the site, or even after, you could do, but it'd be obviously smart to do it before. Get together, make up a name, vote on it. And at that point, we can go ahead and use the crazy names and call ourselves the phantasmagorical things to say, plus in mendham.com. I don't know. You're the most phantasmagorical of all, is the point of that. So that was ironic. But yeah, so the public dialogue server thing, just it's dry, not conservative, just dry, and that serves, and also to get away from the free speech thing. And I think it is conveying my idea better. Sometimes you can come up with a name that's kind of like, I know what he means, but that's better than the one that's like, that's a great name. I don't know what he means, but that's a great name. You know what I mean? So I'd rather take. I guess that's why I go dry, because in the dry area, at least people are like, oh, I know what he means, but I don't like that name. And at least you know what I mean. The other more negative version is it's like Muzak, Everybody knows why it's there, and they hate it a little bit instead of a lot. Okay, or they hate it a lot, but it's like, Muzak's a funny thing and metaphor. But okay, now I've tangentialized for 5 minutes. But yeah, I'm open to names, and I really thank you again. I think I thank you in the next segment, for responding with your ideas and your details. I appreciate it a lot. And I wish other people would step up and do that, but they don't necessarily need to. Like I'm saying, I'm gauging this on support, and the only support we need is the support to launch. But the more, the better, and there's a lot of skills out there, and I want to be, I don't want to be, I want to be a little bit promoting and stuff, and yay, cheerlead, but I'm not much of a cheerleader. When I'm a cheerlead mood, I make a 10-page website that tells you millions of details that would be interesting to me if I were you. So it might be a subtle way of showing that. But that's just my urge, and also those pages show that even if you disagree, like Gary went through the bullet list, and even if you disagree with certain plans, or when you look at the whole thing, I think you'll see, well, there's a lot of concrete thinking, and you can tell what I think I'm going to do, and to the degree where if you disagree with this step, not only could you disagree with it and judge it, which is fine, that's why it's there, but you could also go, well, just change that one step. And I could go, well, yeah, how about this other one? It fits right in there too. And it would all still be clear. It doesn't all have to fall apart. When you have a lot of detail, it allows you to fit things in. I did the page as though there's a concrete plan, because there is, and at a certain point I will go with it just because I believe you have to commit to a plan to have a plan. But also, truth be told, and as you'll see in the next half hour video, there are a couple options. I put two options in the plan, actually: a year of co-located service, or buying where you rent to own kind of thing. You buy the machine from the service, or buy an actual machine. There's actually a couple other options too. I decided blurred the plan too much, but I'm not. I want to mention them to you guys. It's possible just to take our chances. I could take my chance getting a $75 a month server that says they can do this stuff. It would be a pain in the ass configuring it, probably a lot of compromises, a lot of waiting and stuff, and not as fun, kind of painful, and do that, and if there were a lot of people, if I just made them pay $1, then I guess I'd find out if that was enough to. But see, I want to start an organization. I don't want to just do this myself and have you guys go, well, we know he's doing it because he wants to provide the service. Look, he hates it. He must. No, nothing like that. I want it to go. You don't have to get everything right on the first step, but it has to be in the right direction. You don't want to trip. You want to have the beginning of a step is like an arc, and there's a follow through and everything. Even this concept, even after it's over, you visualize, and we're just starting that step. So it might seem like a little difference, this angle or that angle, but it's going to define the arc. So I just like to take those first steps with a smooth, calm surety. And I think having some form of actual organization is almost more important than some of the other things. And in terms of getting the server, it just seems obvious we need a year. And if we're going to, yeah. So I think we're on the same page, Gary and I. I'm talking to everybody too, but everybody, please get involved. At least voice your support. I know there's a lot of you have told me, even, I was surprised, several, perhaps I could even say many, but I think several very credible commenters and it made sense to me that the commenters, and in my secondary site, there's going to be a lot more ways for commenters to have their semi-silent involvements, and because I appreciate that they like watching this stuff. I don't want to make videos. There's people who don't even comment. That's a big group. And I think a lot of those people that don't comment would be like, yeah, but I'll give $50 a year. They obviously like watching it, and so you only need, that's the biggest group that there is. You get a few people a year that are like, hey, this year was pretty good, I could put $50 into this, and it's like Link TV. You don't need any government funds. You do campaign drives where you just collect it all year and you don't even have to bug people for it. that's not usually true if you usually have to have campaigns if you're going to be like voluntary PBS style funding. But anyway, it doesn't have to be that bad. I think it's a good way to augment stuff, but you can also just give people a chance to, like, that's the whole idea of selling t-shirts and books and DVDs, because people that want to support you also get a little token. And actually that's part of the PBS thing, they always give you a tote bag or something. But yeah, I mean, I think how it's funded is almost separate from, you know, well, you know what, the most important thing to me is that it has a critical mass, which is defined two ways. One is the number of people it takes to have a decent conversation, so that even if you have to go elsewhere to do your whole thing, you know, requires other video sites you're maintaining and stuff, it's worth coming and checking out what's going on in the 20 conversations or 10 or whatever it takes at the site. And then the second thing is enough interest to pay for the size of server we need. And that's where the 100 to 200 comes from. I think we need 100 to 200 video producers to support that kind of site. But that's dependent on the producers paying for it all. And I think in terms of funding drives and or voluntary kind of chip-in stuff, yeah, I just think some of people's audiences will chip in, and if, you know, there's a small fraction of that group that wants to give, hey, I'll give $50, then it adds up pretty quick to, you know, your couple thousand bandwidth a year. And when you get really big, you're going to have to hire people to help do IT and keep things running. It'll actually take real resources to do that. But you're still talking about tens of thousands of dollars a year, you know, in terms of sustainability, which I think is doable, because I'm talking about a situation where there's 1,000 producers and you got 100,000 people in the viewing community. So okay, this was supposed to be short, so now it's going to be a 40-minute video. Oh, good. I know you guys love really long videos, and just so you know, it's 3:31 now, and it was 3 when I did the other video, so that's why it seems late. And I want to go do something with the software, but I know it's not advisable. I've done that for a while now, so. Okay, cheers. I appreciate it. I'm going to the website to be able to refer to it. Well, the plan page, yeah, I apologize, I guess. I will go through the points and make them all clear. They are all, you know, the kinds of abstractions I actually use to think about things like this. So they are real, but I did at the last moment realize, Jesus, people need to see. I mean, I have simplified this down to like 4 or 5 principles and things I'm going to work on, things that have to be done, like action items. And so, geez, I'm not paying attention. I just got a domain for this, so it's a little different. So I'll go over those. One thing I wanted to say real quick and get out of the way is I'm blocked from Inmendem, so I don't see your videos. Maybe that's fine. Maybe that's the point. It's like, hey, you know, we won't fight so much. But so I can't comment. Normally that's fine, but you know, there's people in your comments saying things I'd like to reply to and stuff, but whatever. Anyway, okay, so the plan, yeah, I added the plan at the end. Let's go through that real quick. Yeah, now some of the things you say I'm open to, but you know, I decide when you put up a plan like this, you need to be decisive. If I did I'm inclined to go, here's 50 options. What do you think? I like this one. I like these 10, I like this family, and that's confusing to people. So we'd have to change it if we did this other plan. I'll go into later this other plan of the direct paying. Um, but let me just go through what I wrote here as far as what I decided to start with. Um, So collect feedback on the plan. Use Indiegogo or some other site, or even if you just want to think, basic crowdfunding is you start a PayPal, right? Indiegogo allows you to start like a PayPal style thing where however much money you collect, that's how much you collect. And the nice thing about that is that then you can, get whatever you can afford to get. But I thought the guarantee of making sure we could get a year is important. Of course, with your idea, it's possible somebody could donate a year. You can't really buy less than that to make you do a year. There's some that said 6 months, but I decided they weren't really trustworthy. Why are they going to sell you a machine, let you rent the machine for 6 months? And it doesn't really make sense. Anyway, you have to get it for a year. So I said complete the funding campaign just to point out that it's a 3-month thing with Indiegogo, or you make the money. I mean, if you raise the whole money right away. So that's a stage in itself where, in my case, I'd be probably working on other things and maybe and hopefully promoting that effectively, I guess. Not my strong suit. Now, establishing the organization, it's just like you're talking about having a contract. Okay, well, among who? And right away, we want to have groups that are able to. I guess maybe it'll come up later because there was some note in here. The why we need a group for one, because the society wants to interact with a group. Or it'll find an individual, and that's one of the issues with someone donating the bandwidth space. Let's say someone or you buy a year's worth of bandwidth space. I'm totally willing to do that, but then I think that person might be the person then that's ultimately liable for, say, a misinterpretation of the DMCA. I actually would trust you with that role on that side of things, but what about if you're deciding, something more complicated or something involving yourself? When we talk about contracts, that's something we need a contract for. It's like once the donation is donated, that's that, and then you have the rights that we've agreed on. And I do think one of them, for people that donate a big chunk of time or money or other resource to this effort, that we concede the first committee that helps figure out how administrative things go. But if you want to avoid administrative action, like we're saying, just leave the producer to themselves, the way to do that is to have a good way of handling the ones that you can't entirely avoid. I mean, your system will, if it's a good system, help you put things to rest, right? Settle them. By the server is 5, and by the hosting service is 7. But as you pointed out, and maybe you saw on the other server cost page, I have some quotes in there. Configure the server. It is minor. I said some minor development things. Configuring the server is just a couple days, but it's a stage, and depending how we do it, having to log in remotely with the dedicated thing, it might be more like 4 days or something, just because that can be more difficult when you run into some things. Then when you have the machine right there, and I think there might be a few days of some minor developments. Make sure there's a good upload application. Maybe install a couple. If there's I've done a lot of the research on what I think I'll install, like Clipbucket, but there are other alternatives, and I'll check again, and if possible, I'll try to bridge the databases and make these things work together right. So you need to get the hosting service. I found some things here that actually go along the line of getting a dedicated line. In general, the dedicated lines are hard to do because you're starting to talk about $1,000 a month, and yeah, that is really great when you can do that. There's some real economies of scale for a media server if you can, and again, it's not that much for business, $10,000-$12,000 a year. But you need, the way we want to do it, you need a couple thousand users to do that. And you need more than one server and all sorts of costs, right? So that's, but there's some special cases that I'm looking into, but don't get your hopes up. Okay. The launch phase one, a year of server life. Yeah, the point is that we're planning for a year. I wanted to put in this bullet point list. See, that could be put different, and maybe they shouldn't be a numbered list with things like that. And that's sloppy, but it is important. And also, it is important that we start planning for phase two, because in the rest of this plan, one of the things I'm concerned with is that there is undone stuff, and we have to do that in phase two. Like I planned for some sort of liability protection, like you said, a not run for profit, or a mission-oriented LLC. But that's just for phase one. That's to get some things done and some protection, because a lot of stuff can happen in a year. On the other hand, a year is going to go before you know it, and we're going to want to move on to a new type of organization, possibly, or to whatever we decide. And I think it's good to point it out, because I was realizing it, like at my approach to the tier 2 thing, where we have these structured conversations, hopefully with good for debate. And I would think at any of the sites, this is a good topic, right? We could spend a year arguing about how we want this thing to mature into phase 2. Obviously, it won't be, we're going to get it up and running, and for a year it's just going to be up and running. There's a lot left that really, no matter what our favorite topics are, that we can all agree this can affect us, those of us that are taking part in the public dialogue. So it's a way we could test the system, because in my tier 2 thing, I'm imagining a system where you start debates by saying, we're going to make a statement of agreement on the following subject, and you put a paragraph, and then you debate and try to see what you can, you both edit the thing and argue about the edits, and try to come to an agreement of something that in the end is a page or two on whatever subject. And so this is a statement on what we should do in some subject for phase 2 is a perfect platform for that. I'm glad you understood the co-location style service. Yeah, it has to be co-location, but the fact is some people do a rent-to-own thing, and some people call that dedicated, and then I have found even people that just don't mention the dedicated, don't mention the rent-to-own aspect, but you can see they let you configure your own machine. It's a real machine. So it is possible to use dedicated, but I think we need a year, so you end up with still 3,000 or so, but you get the bandwidth and the machine, but you only get the machine for a year, which I think is totally fine. I just want this to work for a year and start the phase 2 plan the whole time, have a year to figure out how you pass the baton to yourself and keep running or whatever. Glad we agree on the SSD drive. Yeah, the SSD I could go on just as a geek about it, because I've seen them coming. I've read some interesting articles where, they'd like to use that solid state stuff for memory, but it's no way near fast enough. But that's the ideal thing, hard drives are a kludge, and even using SSD as a hard drive is a kludge. You really just want memory that acts like the solid state stuff. So when you turn it off, it's just exactly, when you turn it on, it's exactly where it was. You don't only reboot if there was a bug, So they're just great, but in this particular application, they're amazing, because the funny thing about RAID is what you use multiple drives. There's part of it is for redundancy, so if one drive has a failure, you've got another copy, and you can do that with the SSD drives. But the real reason you need RAID for something like a video server is because if two people want to watch two different videos that are on the same drive, there's only one read head on the drive. So to go back and forth, like to stream, you get, let's say you get 25 seconds of this guy's video and send it to him. Then you got to go to the other guy's video, 25 seconds, and send it to him. You got to go back and forth. That's really costly, that moving that physical device back and forth, compared to a computer that just can add numbers and stuff like instantaneously. So you get RAID, and then you have multiple drives. Those two files are on the same drive, but they're also on other drives, and it's all staggered in a way where your little 4 drives all go zipping around, and just having a couple extra drives helps a lot. Well, with the solid state, it's like you had a RAID with thousands of read heads, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter if a file's fragmented. It doesn't matter if you're going back and forth reading 2 files. That's no slower than reading the files one at a time. It doesn't matter if they're contiguous. And it's more expensive, but not that much more expensive. Okay, so it's 4 times more expensive, but we only need a couple hundred gigabytes, and that's just an ordinary size drive that you get, a 500 gigabyte or maybe terabyte drive of a spin disk. So we'll get the spin disks for archive, and that's good because I want to be able to just archive forever. And with spinning disk, you can basically, for a couple, well, actually, depending how many users, a terabyte should last us a while, and that's sort of commodity price. 500 gigabytes last. Okay, say we get a terabyte drive, that lasts a while, and when it fills up, we buy another drive. It'll still be working. But depending how big we get, of course, we'll want to start having some redundancy. But you don't have to have redundancy on other hard drives. You can just start burning the CDs and have a library of that, so you haven't lost stuff. And if you want it accessible, you can even put it on a jukebox and stuff. But anyway, I'm just getting all tangential. The fact is, you just put it probably in a bunch of cheap commodity drives. You have another reason to have RAID at that point, where you do want the redundancy. Yeah, some of the ideas that are still open that we are and can consider with the last point here, the budget for an attorney. Like if we do the thing where we have direct donations, where people buy some of the things that we need. Yeah, I would still want to talk to an attorney to see. Well, I would ask the attorney, well, who really owns this thing? And if the shit hits the fan, who's in trouble? And if this guy doesn't like that, and what if he, changes the password on the server? And what's my rights to get the software that I didn't donate back that was just temporary? Like I might write stuff and work on the server. It doesn't mean I would want to be shut out and you own it, or I wouldn't want to do that to you either. I wouldn't want us all to know what our rights are. So, but doesn't take a couple $1,000s to do that. For a couple $100, I could go get all the consultation I needed for some of these ideas. Right? Okay, so let's go through integrating with other sites like YouTube. I agree, that's a tier 2, or even let's call it tier 3. I do plan to do some of that just because I already have the YouTube API. I already have interfaces to that. And I'll generalize that, and the video tag is coming along. I'll use the video tag. That'll be great. Then we'll just support everybody that has videos when they start using the HTML5 video tag. I'm talking too fast. Stumbling. Okay, tense. Calm down. Okay. So I agree with you on that. Yeah, the tier 1, very much just database, commodity oriented. Do some heavy duty cool stuff in little ways if we need to, gluing things together. Like if I install, let's say I install WordPress, I would like to go in there and make a little tiny plugin where you can just have a little tag in your WordPress blog, and it automatically embeds and or links to, and maybe ways to make replies. But some of that, we definitely don't do that before we put anything online. I mean, we can get it online with video, and the first thing I work on is upload. We have all these clip bucket indexing sites, so I'm not sure how good it does upload and how much work I have to do to hook up the FFmpeg thing. But I think the point with ClipBucket is that is the point. When I install ClipBucket, it'll do all the FFmpeg stuff, but I'll have to figure out how that works. But that's what's awesome about ClipBucket. It does the workhorse stuff you really need to do. And then the interface I consider passable. I also agree that the exclusive content thing. Okay, so here's the deal. I think that it should appeal to a certain subset of people. Like Fred pissed off at the way it works. My tier 2 sites will allow people to still remain contact to places like YouTube, just if only so to be in contact with new participants in the conversation, right? But what I think is, like, at least at the tier 2 site, is that I'm going to add this structure where to know what's going on, or to catch up with parts you've missed, or to read the annotations of hour-long videos you don't have the time to watch at that point, and to do all this kind of take part in the actual thing as a conversation. I just watch a video at a time, but grok the conversation. I think that'll attract people, commenters and people as well, not just video producers. And they'll all take part and be able to take part in new ways. So that if that's a big enough network of people, then the conversation becomes compelling on its own, separate from if a lot of people want to watch it, and you think a lot of people watching means influence, but just where a lot of people find it productive for their own thought. They're the kind of people want to think things through, and they're like, this is helping me think better, not because I'm hearing thoughts that I want to copy, but maybe because, wow, it makes me realize nobody has thoughts I want to copy, so I'm working on my thoughts. And I think that will generate exclusive content. And I do think that this can end up being, a quote-unquote closed community sufficient in itself without any co-uploading. But by that time, I want to see a bunch of people. Like, there should be a bunch of organizations, and we all share our protocols. And we go towards Fred's vision, really, because everybody would have, and you could buy your $50 GoDaddy site, and everybody could contribute, right, into a distributed network that provided the same thing, and with redundancy and stuff. So, and I think that network would have exclusive content, right? I agree with the not-for-profit. I'm glad you get that, because the thing is, like, and for the phase 1, I just know it takes, I've had lots, I've been in politics a lot, I know people do not-for-profits. The getting adopted by a not-for-profit, that could work, but basically, and I'm not entirely convinced, literally a not-for-profit with an unpaid board is exactly the way to go, but it could be, but it'll just take a while. So that's one reason I want to start on phase 2 right away, to get that all sewed up. But if we do an LLC, yes, not for profit, and like try to make from the start, make that in there, like make it something where the dividends they don't exist, where all the money that the thing comes in, that the organization comes to control, stays in the organization's invested in the organization. I like the idea of direct paying, but you need to have some sort of structure, and that's where you definitely need to have the contract, or somebody has to understand how they're going to collect the stuff, how we know what's going on. And I want to know our obligations. I mean, if I imagine 6 of us getting together and doing all that kind of shit, then we argue a lot. What if one of us is having a personal problem, getting divorced that year as well, and just the shit hits the fan? Then what do we do? Are we all screwed? Are all the 1,000 people that are watching videos at the site every day, are they screwed because we didn't get along? I want to make it, the thing about an LLC is then you have an entity that people, that executes its plans, separate from people's personal things. Not always, of course, ever, because people's personal things always seem to dominate, but you know what I'm saying, maybe. But I like the idea of saving a couple $1,000s and putting that kind of thing off until phase 2. And it's not like there's a huge risk. And I do believe I know enough to protect the copyright free speech sort of law as I see it. The problem is whenever it gets blurry, I'm going to have to bail. If you're just liable, maybe you'll be brave, but pretty much at a certain point where you don't have the resources or the knowledge, or you just wonder about it, and hopefully you won't get it wrong and not bail at that point and be wrong and think it wasn't time to bail. So the thing with the LLC is I feel like it would liberate us to be right away fighting exactly how we think, because what we lose is the organization, which if it can't survive and do its mission, then why not? Why should it keep going? It shouldn't. Right? But I don't think individuals should risk their own situation for that, especially when it's not just you and me. There's going to be hundreds of people there. People will try all kinds of weird bullshit. And upload all kinds of weird bullshit and test your system, believe me. So, yeah, the self-ownership LLC idea, that's why I've been talking about Mondragon, is because you can set up self-ownership. It's like, where the ownership is just for the reasons of tax. You were saying, yeah, but you can set up all kinds of self-ownership. One is people that are members could be buying stock. That could be why the fee is nominal on what you're officially buying. Well, no, I don't know, because we're spending money. I don't know, actually, forget that as a detail, but the point is that the members could be given some stock as part of their membership, and then they could be the official owners. And then all the money goes back into the organization, so those official owners basically just have these voting rights that I mentioned in my plan for various reasons. And so if we have committees that are small enough to help, be active and not too slow on administrative activities, ultimately I envision those as elected positions. Though I think starting it with people that have committed some work or resource to this. Well, maybe starting with that, but I'd like to start some elections right away, as well, because I think that would be kind of a fun part of it, and then turn out to be important and something worth taking seriously. So I was thinking of calling it a mission-oriented organization, and either we don't form one, but that I think it would be better to form an LLC for the $600 or whatever. You can do that kind of paperwork yourself, and then at the very least. $300 a month is about right if you're willing to buy a year. The lawyer thing, it's interesting. Well, my ex-wife's uncle, who was like an uncle to me and a really interesting guy, but he was a tax attorney and copyright attorney. He'd done all kinds of things, and a lot of the rules, and I've worked with professional artists, and they'll tell you, oh, if you change it 60%, and then the lawyers will go, no, you can't change it. If I can recognize it all, it hasn't been changed enough. And he was in a case where a guy made a sculpture from a photo and got sued by the photographer, and the photographer won. And all kinds of weird things, and it's kind of what you can get away with. So I realize you can't just go with the lawyers, and a lot of them will give you advice that's just a weird kind of paranoia that isn't what we're going for. But what I'm thinking from the lawyers also, that this is just an organization and a certain kind of medium, and lawyers will at least tell you of some brain dead thing that maybe isn't that important in reality, but that society thinks of as important, like you should do this, that, or the other, or file this, or make sure you have a separate bank account, or it doesn't really matter in this case, and things like this. And for an hour of lawyer time also, if the lawyers seem savvy about it at all, it might be nice to have a lawyer's hand making like our Bill of Rights, or some part of the Bill of Rights of what you can expect, and how we phrase, executing the law of the land and stuff. Within limits, I mean, the kind of thing that a lawyer would spend more than, hopefully, something. Depending on, I mean, I do know some people, some lawyers that are pretty good, I think. But mostly, yeah, if we don't incorporate, I'll just go as an individual to see what my donation of my time and how that all works out. So that's fine. But yeah, if we form an LLC, I want to have, and you might always get a bad lawyer, but that's part of the commitment. You can get somebody, and you can always go back and figure out whatever didn't work out well. I agree. The point is to make the producers free. I'm going to talk a lot about, people get confused. You talk a lot about something like your due process and judicial system, and people will be like, oh, he's just thinking there's going to be problems. Well, it's not like that. It's not like pessimism. No. If you want to have, like, so little problems that everybody at your site thinks there aren't any problems, you need a really good system for handling this, because people will bring up the shit just because they get butthurt in a conversation, and and then you'll think that's what's going on, and you'll find, oh no, this is a real beef in this case. And so you're going to have to deal with it. The better you deal with it, maybe you can get preventative, and then it's 1 in 1,000 times that it's happening, or 1 in 10,000, and you're just going to want to be really good at handling it. And if you ever made such a good community that it only ever happened, everybody just did the right thing, and if somebody made a mistake and somebody pointed out and said, hey, that isn't really fair use of my stuff, and oh, okay, I'll do this and I'll do that, you would still have people just making complaints, and you'd have to have all the better of a system there. If they're just difficult people that want to complain, you need a really good system to handle them. So, prevention. And we need to think about our organization. And I'm not talking about the LLC per se. I'm talking about all the members and how we organize, and whether those people are all owners of an LLC is an idea where they start to bind together. But the important part is definitely, one, society is going to expect that. If there's a DMCA, who's it getting filed on? Probably the guy that rented the host. What if you panic, and then we're all like, no, don't worry about it, it's going to be fine, and you shut down the host because you panic, or you know what I mean? I want an organization. If we don't have one, then there's de facto organizations that the judge gets to decide, and that's somewhat dangerous. So that's point one, is that society expects an organization when you have a group of people working together. I want to check with the lawyer too about your idea that you wouldn't get taxed. I'm not sure. See, maybe if with the dedicated kind of thing. But you see, you couldn't buy the machine, right? Because if you sent the machine to me, well, I could always charge you, or whoever was doing it. I don't know. There's ways to do it, but it might get more complicated than it's worth. And then the second reason is because we're sharing resources. So let's just face it, there is an organization, and even the people that will do nothing but come be viewers, well, that's who we really need, right? So that even they're contributing something, and so even they lose out if we fuck up and put it all down, so that like all the liabilities on one unshielded individual, and so they collapse under some pressure, and you can't really blame them. But who else are you going to blame? And it doesn't matter who you blame, because the point is that whole thing's failed because of that weak point. So I think the fallback on the $2,000 budget is that you could do it with a $1,000 budget. I research this stuff, and I just try to be humble. I'm like, let's talk to a lawyer. But the fact is, I'm pretty sure the cheapest thing that does the liability stuff is an LLC. You could write your what are they called? Whatever the bylaw things for your LLC, with the stuff about reinvesting all the money, that it's a mission oriented. You can even make them go up. You can do whatever you want in just a couple pages, and it's not considered a super formal thing. Like, it has to be a particular way. It's not going to go through an escrow. Just the idea. And so we could do that. And actually, I'm inclined maybe to cut the budget down to that. You know, uh, yeah, probably because I've done my own research on that. You know, and it's just the more we cut down budgets for that, then when we do things like if I do talk to the lawyer and he goes, "Oh, you cut the budget down for that, but actually you need an extra $500 because of this, that, and that," then there's a danger. But so this is one reason I actually like the contribution stuff. And if people were stepping up and going, "Ah, I'm a lawyer, I'll do pro bono," and you could see that they're really a lawyer and stuff, I'd take all of that. I would love if we actually. I totally love the idea of people contributing actual. Like I'm contributing my labor, and somebody contribute money to buy this, and somebody for that, and somebody could do the marketing, somebody could pay for some, I don't know, ironic Google adverts to advertise. I mean, whatever. I would like to do that, but that seems like it has to be organized. So I'd like to hear more about that idea. Um, so yeah, um, and I have some voting software too. I mean, I haven't used it for a while. I made it for the YouTube stuff. I could put in here, and we could even have like different statements for the bylaws and really all the other things that we would want to differ on. So that's an idea. All right, cheers.